What's up? Welcome in. Happy Monday. Coming up here on Eagles Now, some Eagles news and storylines to get to coming off the bye and going into this massive matchup on Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. Super Bowl 57 rematch. Also, at the end of the show, a report from Mike Florio about Philadelphia calling about Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain going into the NFL trade deadline. First, though, it is Chiefs week, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I didn't realize it. I have not gone back to watch the Eagles Super Bowl highlights because I can't do it. Still heartbreaking. I watched my post-game show after the Eagles lost that heartbreaker of a game to Kansas City, but I can't go back and watch the highlights. So if you're like me and you're still pissed off about that Super Bowl loss, that James Bradbury hold, atrocious. I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. And with that, let's talk some birds. A lot of great action this past weekend across the National Football League, but one thing remains constant. Philadelphia still with that number one seed in the NFC, even though they didn't play football on Sunday. 8-1. Still an NFL best record there. Detroit Lions, though, on the heels of Philadelphia, coming through with a last-second field goal on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers to stay in that 2 position at 7-2. Right now, Philadelphia, Detroit, San Francisco, all kind of in that grouping of teams who are still vying for that number one seed and home field advantage. New Orleans Saints, despite the loss, 5-5, but still leading the NFC South. And then the 5 through 7 spots in the NFC playoff picture, the same. Seattle Seahawks, game-winning field goal against the Washington Commanders. Dallas Cowboys beat up on another bad team. Cowboys fans think they're legit, even though they haven't beat a legit squad this year. And then the Minnesota Vikings, winners of 5 straight. Josh Dobbs, 2 straight wins, even though he was just traded for going into the NFL trade deadline. That's a sneaky team right there at 6-4. And then other teams in the hunt, still Washington and Atlanta, as well as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-5. And what a stretch this is going to be for Philadelphia coming off of that aforementioned bye week. They have the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, Super Bowl 57 rematch. Then they come back home short week against the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's been struggling this year, but that's a really good team. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and a really good defense. That could prove to be a pivotal matchup for both of these teams. Buffalo vying for playoff and jockeying for playoff positioning in the AFC, and then Philadelphia really trying to hold on to the division lead in the NFC East. But they ideally want that home field advantage in the NFC too. Rematch of the NFC Championship game to kick off December on the 3rd against San Francisco at Lincoln Financial Field. On the road against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Then a difficult matchup. Pacific Northwest, far traveled, difficult place to play, quality opponent in the Seattle Seahawks. After that, things get a little bit easier, but this 5-game stretch for Philadelphia going to come through with a lot of storylines pertaining to this ball club. So with that, you look at that schedule here. What will the Eagles' record be over the next 4 weeks? Get your predictions in right now. Curious to see your level of confidence or lack thereof down in the comment section here. And without further ado, purpose of today's show, just some storylines and a little bit of a refresher for all of you. Going into this Chiefs game, the Philadelphia Eagles, 2.5-point road underdogs going into Arrowhead Stadium. Is Taylor Swift going to be there? Who the hell cares? At least I don't. But that line right there, kind of an Eagles favorite line, 2.5-point road underdogs against the Chiefs. Their offensive line is bad. Their offense has not been the same, but they do have one of the league's best defenses. And the storylines that I'm following this week going into this Kansas City game, the health of Jaylen Herz. He even said after that Dallas victory, the bye week comes at a really good time. The direct quote, selfishly, I don't think the bye could have come at a better time. Been dealing with that knee injury over the last couple of weeks, and he has rarely run the football, but I think a positive coming out of this, even though he doesn't really have that running element to his game, he's had to win from the pocket. He's flourished, and he's done a great job of developing as a passer in this league. You look at what he did against Washington, what he did against Dallas. I think these are his two best performances of the season. And over the last month or so since that Jets loss, I think that Hertz has really come into his own as a thrower of the football. Against the Commanders, 29-38, down 14-3, completed 76% of his throws, 319 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and a rating of 135.7. Then against the Cowboys team that's top 5 defensively, 17-23, took that hit to his knee, still completed about 74% of his passes, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground, and a rating of 130.2. So I think that Hertz here is finding a groove and has found a groove in throwing the football, and I think that's a great sign this year for Philadelphia's offense, but in the future, because he's the franchise quarterback, and the way to win in this league is consistently winning from the pocket. So doesn't have that ground game to kind of summarize this talking point, but the good news is he's been getting it done and airing the ball out, letting some throws rip. With this Eagles offense, sticking with it, can Philadelphia get this ground game going against the Chiefs, but also for the rest of the year? Overall, the Eagles have a good rushing offense if you take a look at the statistics of where they rank among all 32 teams in the NFL. Going into Week 10, Eagles had the NFL's number 7 ranked rushing offense, averaging just under 130 yards per game. Great, right? Those numbers are skewed because this rushing offense has been in decline over the last month. Last 4 games, Philadelphia averaging just 86.8 yards per game. It's great on one end that Jaylen Herz and this aerial attack have been among the league's best, but the Eagles are at their best when they pose the throw and the run game, because the more versatile and diverse and multiple you are, I believe that makes Philadelphia a very dangerous team and a difficult team to stop, because in the playoffs, down the stretch of the regular season, especially over the next 5, if a defense takes one thing away, they can hit you with another like a prize fighter in the boxing ring. Eagles rushing numbers in depth here, weeks 1 through 4. This is also when Cam Jurgens is playing. So hopefully when he comes back, that's the return of this improved Eagles rushing offense. 140 attempts, 661 yards, average yards per carry 4.7 with 5 touchdowns. Those numbers have plummeted over those last 4 games. As I said, only 506 yards on more carries. Yards per attempt goes down to 3.4. Touchdowns go up, but those numbers skewed as well a little bit because of the brotherly shove. But I'm bringing this talking point up because the Eagles, for the rest of the way, are going to be playing some of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, at least some of them mediocre to bad. Against the Chiefs, they have the number 17th ranked rushing defense. They're giving up 112 yards per game on 4.5 carries. The Bills rank 19th, 114 yards allowed per game on the ground, yards per carry at 4.9. San Francisco's numbers, they are better than they seem, but this is after they were actually good against the Jags, number 4 rushing rank at 83 yards per game on 4 yards per tote. And then those Dallas Cowboys. I talked about the Eagles rushing game being a big point of emphasis going into that game 2 weeks ago. 15th ranked rushing defense. And then you look at Seattle, New York Giants, the Arizona Cardinals, and then the Eagles rounding out with the Giants a second time in 3 weeks, respectively. Seattle 20th, Giants 24th, Cardinals 28th, and the Giants 24th again. So Philadelphia here does have an opportunity to right the ship. They have an opportunity with Cam Jurgens coming back to reclaim that success on the ground. I'm not saying I want that to take away from what Hertz is doing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the Eagles just have to find a way to get better on the ground because it makes their team more dangerous, more difficult to stop, and better at the end of the day. Still a lot left to get to here on this Monday, but first, let's play another game. Let's bring this back. Name this Eagle here to my right. Answer reveal coming up a little bit later. If you're looking for tickets, the only answer I have for you, Game Time app, and $20 off your purchase if you download the app for free, and then you use this code here to my right. That is Eagles Chat. Best seats at the lowest price guaranteed. If you're looking to go to an Eagles game coming up on the road or at Lincoln Financial Field, still plenty of tickets available for multiple different price points. What I love about the Game Time app, the user experience. You can see where you'll be sitting and the price point for where you'll be sitting as well. Road tickets available against the Chiefs if you want to make a road trip or you're living around Kansas City. Bills game coming up, Niners NFC Championship game rematch. I know that here in Dallas, I'm looking forward to Eagles Cowboys. I'm going to try to go to some Eagles pep rallies around here, maybe get some content out of it. Eagles Seahawks in the Pacific Northwest if you want to fly out there. One more time, it is the promo code Eagles Chat. You get $20 off. We're having a competition here at Chat Sports. How many Eagles fans, as compared to other team channels under the Chat Sports umbrella, can we get to use this code? You're a winner at the end of the day because you get $20 off, and it's not just Eagles tickets, right? You can go to comedy shows, you can go to concerts, Sixers tickets as well. Best team in the NBA up to this point in the early going. More storylines that I'm following here. What is the Eagles' plan without Dallas Goedert? Not just this week against Kansas City, but until he comes back. Out about 5 weeks with that forearm fracture. The Eagles' tight end depth chart right now. Jack Stoll moves up into tight end number 1. Grant Calcaterra, tight end number 2. And that Albert Okwuegbunam, who was active against Dallas, minimal playing time, could have a larger role. Very talented pass catcher and athlete. The thing about all three of these tight ends, Stoll, more of a blocking tight end. Great mullet, by the way. Grant Calcaterra, very good athlete. You can use him a little bit as a blocker. You don't want to use Albert O as a blocker because it's one of the reasons that he fell out of favor in the Mile High City with the Denver Broncos. But, man, I'll tell you what. You line him up in the slot, he's as good as many backup tight ends across the NFL at being an intriguing athlete. Philadelphia does a good job of developing those athletes into players. So I think you'll see a little bit of a combination of all of those tight ends on the field for Philadelphia's offense. I also think that you don't just have to focus on which tight end is going to produce because you still have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith. You could involve them a little bit more, but I also think Philadelphia wants to see if one of the other wide receivers can step up. Julio Jones, more playing time. Olamide Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins, if he comes back off IR. All things to keep in mind for this Eagles team. Does the secondary just flat out suck, or can they make improvements? Right now, things are not good for the secondary, especially going up against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. And Andy Reid has been a wizard coming off the bye. And while this Chiefs offense has not been good, if I'm going to put money on a head coach and a quarterback, righting the ship, making adjustments, and improving what has been a porous offense, it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Hopefully, this is the week that this Chiefs offense does not catch fire. Because on the ground, the Eagles have one of the best rushing defenses. Yards allowed per game, first in the NFL at 66.3. Rushing touchdowns allowed, 3 all year. That's tied for the second lowest in the NFL, and they're the second highest rated team in that category. But then you look at the passing yards per game, 29th, and passing touchdowns, 31st in the NFL. If the Eagles have any hopes of getting back to the Super Bowl, and this time winning it, quarterbacks are getting better coming up. Offenses are really good coming up. And then once you get in the playoffs, you're facing the best of the best. It has to get figured out. Otherwise, we're going to see a repeat of what happened in the second half of the Super Bowl, where the only incompletion for Patrick Mahomes was on a throwaway, and the Eagles couldn't stop a nosebleed. And then lastly, how will the Eagles linebackers play? Jacoby Dean is out. He's been one of the worst linebackers in coverage as an off-ball backer. Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham can get it done. I do have confidence in those players. It certainly helps when the Eagles' defensive line is as good as it is, but imagine Eagles' defensive line has been good. They have frontline starters. They have great depth pieces, but they've been a little bit too sack-reliant over the last few games, having to come through with sacks late in the game. That's great, but what happens when you can't generate a pass rush like you could not do in the Super Bowl? Then that back end is left to dry. Again, you're just looking for all three levels of this defense to start clicking. Sean Desai has made some really good adjustments, and when they get clicking, if they ever do, when you combine that with this offense, this Eagles team might be the best team in the NFL. And right now, I think they're the most multiple team and the most talented team. And yes, I do think they're still one of the best teams in the NFL, yet they still haven't played their A game. Monday Night Football coming up. We'll be back for another watch party. Do not miss it. Some awesome Super Chat giveaways and the best place to experience the game outside of being at the game. Who you got? Birds, Chiefs? Let me know once again in the comments section. We round out today's show with this. Report from Mike Florio that the Eagles checked in on Patrick Surtain. They got so close to potentially landing a big fish at the cornerback spot, which would have sent a ripple effect through the rest of the NFL with how good Surtain is, and then we would legitimately be talking about him as a building block for this Eagles team over the next several years. Florio said that both the Eagles and the Niners were competing for the services of Patrick Surtain. Here's more from Florio on Pro Football Talk that on Sunday morning, Adam Schefter of ESPN reported that the Niners checked in on the availability of multiple defensive backs, including Surtain, but then Florio said the Niners not alone in that pursuit. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, both the 49ers and the Eagles explored the possibility of trading for Surtain. They both were calling the Broncos, and they each were concerned that the other would end up with Surtain. A little bit of an arms race between the two NFC powers. It wasn't to be, however, because the Broncos would not trade him without a major haul. The Broncos see Surtain as someone who checks every box. Many teams across the NFL, and probably including Howie Roseman, probably look at Surtain as checking off every box. He's one of the best coverage corners in the NFL. He's still young, and again, a building block for any team, whether it's Denver or an acquiring team, if they try to go after him, and that's probably what teams envisioned and thought about in their pursuit of Patrick Surtain. I think that Philadelphia may try to revisit a Patrick Surtain trade after the year. I think that James Bradbury has showed his age a little bit. Darius Slay is still playing really good ball. I like some of the youngsters at that cornerback spot currently on this Eagles roster. Still a believer in Eli Ricks, even though he struggled against C.D. Lamb. But C.D. Lamb, yes, he's a Dallas Cowboy. He's been on a crazy heater over the last few weeks. But I think Philadelphia, going into next year, needs to improve that cornerback spot a lot. If they don't land a free agent, maybe a Surtain trade makes sense, or maybe they go cost-controlled asset and they draft a corner in the first round for the first time since Lito Shepherd in the early 2000s, and they go with a young player there who's a lot cheaper than a free agent acquisition or maybe even a trade piece. Earlier on, I said, name this Eagle. Last opportunity for you to get those guesses in. Who is it? Drum roll. The real ones know. This is a classic. We went deep into the Eagles history bag here. Quarterback Norm Van Brocklin only spent a couple of years with the Philadelphia Eagles after playing a lot for the Los Angeles Rams, but he made his impact be known. 1960 NFL champion and the league MVP, as well as first-team All-Pro honor. So if you guessed Norm Van Brocklin, good job by you. Appreciate y'all for watching. We'll be live this week. We'll be providing you with the best Eagles coverage going into this Chiefs matchup, as we always do, so don't miss our content. How do you not miss it? Subscribe to the channel and go Birds.